Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. One of my viewers just came out of college and they are dealing with a lot of the frustrations I dealt with in the job market back in the 90s. Now, back in 1994, when I graduated college with a degree in business administration, I thought that I would be able to get my first job and get my life started. And I thought this because I was told by the media, my family, and many at the college I went to that if I got this degree, it would open doors with employers and I would easily be able to find a job. Now, after I graduated my college in 1994 with a 3.95 GPA and a degree in business administration, I thought that the world was going to change for me, and I thought people were going to go out here and be eager to hire me, and that doors would open for me at most of the jobs here in New York City. Unfortunately, what I ran into was the same resistance that I ran into back when I graduated from high school and I was looking for a job. Now, back when I was in high school and looking for a job, I went all over putting in applications, and I also went and registered with multiple temp agencies. And when I went out there applying for those entry-level jobs in high school, what happened was many of those people went out here and said that they would call me, but never called back. And many of the temp agencies I went to were extremely nasty to me. Many of them basically were blowing me off, saying that they had no work for me because I had no experience and they didn't even want to consider me. Now, I thought things would change once I went out here and got a college degree. However, I ran into more of the same resistance, even though I had gone out here and gotten a higher education. Now, even though I had gotten a higher education, I was still putting in for many of the entry-level jobs that only supposedly required a high school diploma, and I was still being told that because I didn't have the experience that they wanted, they still didn't want to hire me. Moreover, as I went to apply to the temp agencies looking for temporary work, I also ran into more of the same resistance and hostile attitudes at these temporary agencies, and many of these people blew me off once again. Even though I had gotten the college degree, I was still getting the same nasty attitude and the same lack of support from these temp agencies. So I had gone out here and gotten this education that I thought was going to open doors, but the same doors were remaining closed on the entry level at many of these companies. And this is the same type of frustration that my viewer is dealing with right now as related to today's job market, which is supposed to be abundant and there's supposed to be shortages of workers, but he is running into the same resistance that I'm running into, where people don't want to take any sort of risk or give a chance to an individual, and if they don't want to take that risk, I've learned, because many of these people are afraid of failure. And they're afraid that if they choose you, that you're going to wind up blowing them off or messing them up. But the whole thing is, that's their fear and you can't take it personally. Now, the viewer is also dealing with a lot of issues as related to his family that I ran into with my own family back in the 90s. Now, back in the 90s, as I was going to school, my father, who was alive at the time, he expected big things from me. He expected me to be able to go out here and get a job easily, and he would constantly be talking to me and trying to ask me where I was going to make progress, and I really wanted to say that I was doing something, but things just would not work out. And this was something that baffled my father when he was alive. He kept wondering what I was doing wrong, and oftentimes there was nothing I was doing wrong at all. But back in 1994, 95, my family thought oh, it must be something I was doing wrong. Now, I was an introvert and I had anxiety issues, people thought, oh, it had to do with eye contact. And I would make eye contact with these individuals like I'm looking at you right now. But many of these same employers, they would just not be interested in hiring me or taking a risk on me, even though I showed that I had a very solid work ethic when I was in high school by being on the honor roll at my high school and also graduating at the top of my class in college. Even though I had made all of these major accomplishments, this did not matter to these employers as related to showing what many say they want, like so-called commitment and work ethic. Here I am showing you that I can go out here and put in the work as related to school projects, and I'm consistently there because I practically went to school every day, and I never missed a day when I was in college. I was practically had perfect attendance in college, but this didn't matter to the employers, who I realize now just moved the goalpost and talk about, oh, I want work experience. Well, if you want work experience, you're going to have to go out here and take a risk, because nobody really comes into entry-level jobs knowing how things are done in a company. I mean, many of the jobs I was applying to were entry-level positions because my goal when I went to somebody's company was to learn the business back in the 90s, learn how they did things. Unfortunately, many people didn't want to take a risk on me as an outsider, because what I learned when my mother wrote to Billy Graham was that most people only went out here and hired people that they knew. And that was at the end of the booklet he had sent me, where they talked about how you had to have contacts. Unfortunately, when I was in junior high school and high school, there was no way to build relationships with people because the environments I had come up in were extremely toxic. Because during the late 80s, when I was in junior high school and high school, you had all of these drug dealers out here, and you had a lot of these guys in the crack, because the crack was at an epidemic. You had a lot of guys. There was no way you could form friendships or alliances with people, because you didn't know who was involved with the drug lords, and you didn't know whether or not that could get you locked up, because getting involved with the wrong person back then could get you locked up. And that's why I didn't have many friends back when I was a teenager, and I didn't understand how this impacted my life later on as an adult, because I had to roll solo, because there was no way you could be friends with people, because it could get you locked up or it could get you killed. So I was going into the job market, with a very handicap, because you needed to know people in order to get hired. And that was one of the things that led to a lot of frustration for me, because I thought, you would come into a company based on merit. I thought you could come in based on showing your merits. But in most cases, people hire their friends, they hire their family. And my family really didn't have many connections in the job market. And my family was wondering, what was going wrong. But what was going wrong was the fact that I just did not have the connections to go out here and get hired. And this is what I believe my viewer is dealing with. And the thing is that he's dealing with a lot of frustration right now as related to the job market. But that frustration is something I believe everybody has to deal with, because there's, as I see it in this country, a serious disconnect between the employers and these colleges as related to what type of employees that they want. Because many of these colleges, they talk about how they're preparing people for the world of work. However, many of the employers don't seem to be communicating with the schools about what they're looking for. And in many cases, they're not really going out here and looking to try to fix this connect so that they can have a pipeline to quality workers. So there's a real problem there as related to the colleges and many of these employers. And many of these employers are still talking about work experience, and it's really, as I see it, holding them back, because you sitting there talking about experience is not going to really get you the kind of workers who can be productive, because if you want productive workers, you've got to teach and train them on your procedures. You've got to teach and train them on how you do things at your business. And this is one of the things that is frustrating for a lot of new workers, that we want to come in, but we can't come in because nobody wants to take a risk, because everybody wants the safe, guaranteed worker. But there's only way you're going to get a worker who does what you need them to do, and that is if you take the time to teach them on your job. Now, what my viewer wants to know is, how do you navigate through your emotions as you're trying to deal with all of this pressure and frustrations that you're dealing with as related to your job search. Now, this was something I had to learn how to deal with as related to navigating through your emotions, because you are in a place where everybody is just wanting you to have success, and they want to see you achieve. And what they're thinking is that there's something that you're doing wrong, and you're doing everything to the best of your ability. Unfortunately, nobody outside wants to go out here and take that risk. And you're thinking that it's something wrong with you, but I can tell you from experience, there's nothing wrong with you. You can do things 100 different ways with 100 different employers and still get no results. I mean, I remember one time people were telling me I was too heavy, and that was one of the reasons why I wasn't getting hired. Another reason was some people were saying, oh, it's the haircut, so I cut my hair down in 95 to a Caesar, and I still wasn't getting work. I was going to the same places, applying for the same jobs, and even applying at the same agencies, and still getting blown off and ignored. And it didn't matter how much I changed myself. These people just weren't interested, because they just weren't interested. And it was getting to the point where I was getting really frustrated, and my family was thinking that it was me, and some people weren't believing that I really wanted to work, because I really wanted to work at one of these jobs. But many of these employers, they just didn't want to take any sort of risk. And this was something that I not only ran into back when I graduated college, it was something I also ran into when I left AmeriCorps back in 2001. Now, back in 2001, after I left the Strive program, I thought that I would be able to open more doors by working with America's #1 job readiness workshop, which worked with the most unemployable individuals. However, it didn't matter to many of these employers who, even with a year of experience, were still blowing me off. And I remember going out here applying for many of, again, the same entry-level jobs, looking to try to open a door with an employer, but it still remained closed, because many people out here, again, they just don't want to take a risk on, as I see it, a heterosexual black man. And I went to some of these temp agencies again, and I thought, oh, having AmeriCorps would be on my resume, would get their attention. But I also got blown off by those same temp agencies once more, even though I showed how I was committed to staying at AmeriCorps for a year, working with the most troubled populations, like the homeless and single mothers and those who were so-called unemployable. And I stayed there committed to this job for a year. I thought it would open a door and at least get me temp work at some of these companies, but it got me nothing at the end of the day. Even though I had the nice suit on and I was selling myself, many of these same employers just weren't interested. And what I find with the job search is that many of these employers, they're very subjective. And again, they go by who they know, not what you know. And that's one of the big mistakes that I believe many employers make out here, going by who they know, because it's something that they believe is safe. But when you go by what a person knows on merit, you may be able to manage that person better. Because when I look at the way that people get hired, when you hire who you know, you go in out here and you hire someone who you think you can just create covert contracts with, but then you can't get any goals met because this person does not want to take any accountability because they think that they're cool with you, whereas a person who you hire on merit, they have to be accountable for their work, and their work has to meet a certain standard for quality. So when you're hiring a person who you're hiring based on merit and what they know, you can objectively assess their skills, and you can objectively supervise them, and supervise them based on the quality of their work, not based on who they are. So that's one of the things that I believe is important to hiring. And even now, when I'm working at SJS Direct on my own company, I still really didn't know anyone when I went out here and I was hiring artists or for my covers or my comics, and I would hire people based on the merit of their work. I would hire them based on the quality of their work, and knock wood, thank God, I have had really good professional relationships with the artists I've worked with and letterers I've worked with, because that's the way that's what I want to hire based on the quality of the work. So when I do for my own business, that's what I would do for at somebody else's company. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to go out here and show people what I could do for their companies, because many people wanted to say, oh, you don't have experience as related to working for some white person's corporation. So I had to start working for myself because employers would not give me a chance. And right now, that's who I'm working for right now, is myself, because many employers, even though I had a college degree and graduated at the top of my class, I could not get in the door with these employers, even though the media made all of these promises that I would be able to get this job. The people at the school said I would be able to get these jobs. And every time I would go out here and try to apply for many of these jobs, I would just get blown off and ignored. And when I would get one of these jobs, like the one I had at City College, sadly, you run into toxic people who try to get you out of that job just as you're getting in. And it just, again, I understand where this viewer is coming from, because I had to navigate through my emotions in those situations. I know all about the frustrations this viewer is dealing with as related to their family, because it was something I had to deal with my family. And things really got tense in my family when I wasn't able to get that job very quickly, and my family started to doubt me, and they started to not really believe in my ability. And I thought that there was something really sad about that, because everybody believed in me when I was out here getting the good grades and graduating at the top of my class, but all of that faith fell completely apart once I started to enter the job market and ran into resistance. And it's really stressful when you're trying to go out here and trying to find work, and everybody is doubting you, thinking it's your fault, when in actuality it's not your fault. It's that you're running into employers, and many of these employers, their standards are so subjective. There is no possible way to find a way to please all of them, or to meet the qualifications for their jobs, because in their ads they'll sit there and say, oh, I'm looking for somebody with no experience, and then you'll go there and then they'll start talking about experience, which showing you how arbitrary many of these people are. Or sometimes you will go into these jobs that are really entry level, like retail, and you'll have people sitting there talking about how they are looking for somebody else right in front of you. So it's hard to really find a way to enter the job market and find an employer, because everything is so subjective, and this can really frustrate a college graduate or a high school graduate who is just entering the job market to try to tailor themselves in order to fit one of these jobs, because everything in these jobs, again, is so subjective and based on sometimes the opinions of an employer or the feelings of the employer, where some employers want to like you, So it becomes really frustrating to deal with as related to the job market. So I understand where this viewer is coming from, because I've had those stresses myself, and that was one of the things that really it just stays with me to this day, because I wanted to go out here after I lost the last job at City College. I really wanted to go out here and get another job because I wanted to make my father happy. And sadly, before he passed away, I was never able to secure that full-time job that he wanted me to have. I mean, he was really stressed about me not having a job, even though he was himself dealing with dementia. And I really wanted to go out here and get that full-time job to try to make him feel a bit better. And I wanted to make things work. Unfortunately, many of these employers, they're just so resistant these days, and it makes it hard for many young people and even people my age to go out here and get work, because you got people out here, again, it's just so arbitrary as related to who they hire, because some people will put an ad saying, oh, I want a person with a bachelor's degree, then go out here and hire their cousin with a GED. And some people will sit there and say, oh, I want somebody with no experience, and then go out here, and then when you're on an interview, asking you about where you've worked and how many degrees you've got. So it's really frustrating, and I understand where this viewer is coming from. I understand their pain, because I've lived through that pain, and I had to navigate through my emotions, where I had family members telling me that my degree wasn't good enough. I had family members telling me that they doubted my ability. I had family members telling me that I didn't want to work, and I had to not react to their statements, even though some of these statements actually were very hurt me very deeply. I had to go out here, and while I felt the feelings, I did not act on the feelings, because if I were to act on the feelings, I would have really caused rifts in my family, and I would have practically lost relationships with family members, and I possibly could have really strained relationships between myself and my father, and that was one of the things that I did not want to do. I understood that, yes, this job search is frustrating, and it's not anybody's fault as related to my family. People just came in with expectations, but we need to start getting real about these job market. We need to start telling kids the truth about college, that a college degree will not get you a job, because that's the lie I was told. Oh, a college degree will open doors, work experience will open doors. I was told all of this, and it never materialized, and we need to start telling the truth to all of the young people out here, that it's not about what you know, it's in many cases who you know. And many people, they're afraid as related to these employers, of taking risks. So it doesn't matter if you're wearing a Brooks Brothers suit or you're out here looking as professional as possible. Many of these people go and hire based on their feelings or based on their friends. So that's the truth about the job market. It's not about the degrees. It's not about all of the experience. People just hire who they want to hire, and they go and do whatever they want to do, not based on merit in most cases. I mean, it's not like me. When I go out here and I hire a comic artist to do my covers, or an artist to do my comic, like John Haynes at Death's Door, I hire based on merit, because I look at the page, and I look at the skills on the page, and I look at the craftsmanship on the page. I hire based on merit in most cases, and that's not something you see most cases. But the reason why I do that is because of the way I was treated in the job market, and the way I was treated in the job market was really cruel. And sadly, a lot of people get treated like this, and it's cruel. And the whole thing is, because there's nobody there to sit down and talk to a young man, they become frustrated, and some wind up on the road to becoming men in crisis. And I'm hoping that this video will help the viewer who is just coming out of school understand that the job market is a very frustrating thing. And the whole thing is that there's nothing that you're doing wrong. You can look a person dead in the eye and tell them the truth, but many people, they want what they want, and many people are just want who they want, and there's no changing their mind. So you just have to just be able to build up a thick skin, walk away from many of these companies, and start focusing on working on your own thing. Because a lot of these companies, a lot of them, these people are, again, arbitrary, trivial, and very picky. So there's no real. That's one of the reasons why I went out here and started my own thing, SJS Direct. And I've been working on my own thing for over 20 years because many of these employers, after I came out of college and got the big promises, didn't deliver on the goods. So I had to go out here and make my own goods and make my own way. And that possibly may be the thing that many college graduates have to do these days, because even in this so-called abundant job market, many employers are still holding on to the same trivial and arbitrary reasons for hiring people. And even that's when they're saying that they're desperate. Because recently I put in an application at an Aldi on 3rd Avenue here in the Bronx, and I got turned down. I put in an application at a Target, and I got turned down. And even though these people say that they're so desperate for workers, I'm still getting blown off. And it just shows me that, again, this job market is really still the same mess it was back in the 90s. And this is what my viewer is running into, the exact same thing. But you just can't let your emotions get the better of you and let your frustrations get the better of you, because you have too much to lose to wind up exploding in rage and cost yourself relationships with family members, or cost yourself relationships with friends. Eventually, you will find a job, and eventually you will get a way to just make some money. Don't worry about careers or anything like that. Just stack your paper and focus on where you want to go, and focus on what you want to do, because these jobs come and go, but you have to keep yourself together. And while people may say things that hurt your feelings, don't act on those feelings, and don't act impulsively in ways that cost you everything that you're trying to work for to build yourself up with right now. Now, I'm hoping that this helps the viewer understand how frustrating the job market is out here, even in the so-called great economic condition. And I'm hoping that they are able to keep themselves and their mental health together, because these job searches are frustrating. They're very stressful, and a lot of people don't know how much pressure it is, especially when you come out of school. So when you come out of school, it's a lot of pressure to go out here and get that first job. And a lot of times it's not the person's fault that they can't find work. A lot of times it's employers who seem to have this disconnect with the schools, and it's that disconnect that keeps people from going out here and starting the work and starting their lives. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my positive fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Hayes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBook Store, Barnes & Noble, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella. Discover the dark side of love in this goth and lovely romance with Spinsterella. Get Spinsterella in paperback and e-readers at your favorite online bookseller today.